Welcome to this presentation titled Developing an Understanding of the Mindset of Traffickers. I'm Matthew Clarke. I'm the Principal Researcher with the Freedom Keys Research Project based in Australia. My research investigates how the effectiveness of anti-trafficking strategies can be improved and brings a special focus on the need to understand and engage with the people who perpetrate the abuses, exploitation and coercion that fall under the umbrella label human trafficking. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Sudha.
Thank you, Matthew. Hi, I'm Sudha Upadhyayula. I'm a PhD scholar in Tata Institute of Social Sciences. I have been a practitioner working in the field of anti-human trafficking, creating awareness in India for the past 6 years. And that's when I developed interest in this field. And currently I'm the COO of 1 Billion Literates Foundation.
Now, Sudha and I have never met face-to-face, but we've collaborated remotely over the past couple of years, and we both recognise that the global problem of human trafficking, whether that be sex trafficking, forced marriage, labour exploitation, or any other form of human trafficking, will never end unless we change the behaviours of the people who abuse, exploit and coerce others. And if we want to change those behaviours, then we need to develop a better understanding of the mindset of traffickers. So in this presentation, we'll start with some general comments on the work that's already been undertaken in this space, and we'll note how little there has been. And then we'll hear about the data Sudha has been collecting through interviews with people accused of sex trafficking in her PhD study. And we'll end with some comments on how the little that we do know challenges some of the commonly held understandings of traffickers.
Yeah, and Matthew has done a lot of reading. And like he mentioned, though we have not met face to face, I met him first in a webinar that he was a part of as a speaker. And I immediately connected to him. And I understood that we have synergies to work together on this topic. And I reached out to him and he's been guiding me in my PhD research too. He has done a lot of reading about the traffickers. And let's hear from him.
Given that the anti-trafficking movement pays so little attention to understanding traffickers or engaging with them directly, it's no surprise that not a lot has been written. In the context of sex trafficking, there is a fairly extensive body of literature about pimps and sex buyers, their methods and demographics, much less in other areas of trafficking, such as forced marriage or child soldiers, labour exploitation, or even state-sponsored trafficking. In the last decade, almost nothing has been written about what's going on inside the minds of the people who abuse, exploit and coerce others in ways that fall under this term human trafficking. What are they thinking? What do they intend to gain? What's the internal psychology and the external circumstances that led them into human trafficking in the first place? What would it take for them to change? And on this slide, we've listed some of the main works in the past 15 years, and these are important precisely because they are so rare. As far back as 2008, Rebecca Surtees made some preliminary comments about traffickers and noted that there was a lack of work in this area. And then Naomi Svensson in 2011 interviewed 57 female sex traffickers in prison. And among other things, she found that almost a quarter of the traffickers were themselves previously victims. Many had suffered financial hardship, family dysfunction, abuse and trauma. The Journal of Human Trafficking had a special issue on traffickers in 2016 with 6 articles that are all worth reading. Austin Choi Fitzpatrick was the editor of that special edition, and he himself published what is probably the most detailed analysis of the mindset of traffickers in his 2017 book, What Slaveholders Think. That work reports on extensive fieldwork in India, focusing on bonded labour. One of his important observations was that the traffickers in that context thought that they were doing a service to the labourers they exploited. In 2018, Melissa Deary made some insightful observations about the inadequacy of how traffickers are presented in the media. And then an article of my own appeared in the Journal of Human Rights Practice in 2021. And there I argued the continued importance of changing the behaviour of traffickers. And I outlined what's still needed in the research and practice of that strategy. The Anti-Trafficking Review published a special issue on traffickers in 2022. There was 14 articles there that highlighted the ambiguity inherent in the label trafficker and the nuanced complexity and variability in their backgrounds, motives, and intentions. That issue of the Anti-Trafficking Review included an article of mine in which I challenged the often heard claim that what motivates traffickers is simply financial gain, and we'll return to that idea later in this presentation. Rose Broad has published several times on this topic, culminating in the book that came out just last year, Demystifying Modern Slavery, co-written with David Gadd. And that book is built around 21 detailed case studies of traffickers in the UK. Now, if you're keen to grapple with the complexity of this topic, these are all good starting points. All of them will point you to related studies. I might say a word about why so little has been published in this area. And part of the problem, as you know, Sudha, is that it's difficult to get access to traffickers. And it's difficult to get funding for that kind of research. People maybe hold the view that you shouldn't dirty yourself by engaging with the bad guys. And so it's difficult to get engagement from supporters who dealing with traffickers doesn't have that emotional draw that engaging with victims and survivors does. And many would think that the traffickers are just evil and greedy and they aren't going to change whatever you do, so it's all a waste of time. I think there's some of the reasons why this is such an underdeveloped field, which draws attention to the fact that you have got engaged in this, Sudha. So I wonder if you'd give us a bit of background to why you started this PhD. What drew you to this topic?
Yeah. So PhD was always dream since my childhood, and I kept postponing it, and the time came in, and then enrolled for INTIS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, for a PhD in women's studies. I've been reading a lot of subjects. Then I started working in the anti-trafficking field. I realized there is the subject is so grave, the problem is enormous, but seldom people talk about it in the society. Yeah, so that's when I started thinking about doing my PhD in the subject of human trafficking, and I started reading a lot about it. What interested me was there were a lot of studies on victims, yeah, and crime itself, and especially internationally. And coming to India, while there were very few studies on trafficking subject itself, there were near nil, I mean zero studies on traffickers. That's when I thought, why not do a research on that? Another reason it interested me was I believe in implementation research. As a practitioner and as well as an academician, we have to learn from the academics and then implement the right kind of awareness programs for it to be effective. And that's when I thought I should get in studying the traffickers. I was fortunate enough getting access to traffickers, like Matthew said, is very tough. They're in jails if you have to get them at one go, and permissions to reach them is a long bureaucratic process. So I was fortunate enough to get access to this jail, which lodged the under trials of trafficking. They're not yet convicted, but they're under trials.
Yeah, so Sudha, can you say some more then about the methodology and about the people that you interviewed?
Perfect, sure. So the methodology that I used was qualitative interviews and in a structured format. And I wanted a triangulated data, that is get data from 3 different sources about the subject. So I chose to interview the under trials in the jails, lodged in the jails, and also the investigating officers who were investigating the crimes, the police officers and advocates who are involved in the cases too. The third data source that I took was from the NGOs, who are the on ground, who know the on ground situation, who also will be able to guide us the perspective from both the person, the community, the victims, and also the traffickers. And later, once the semi-structured interviews were completed, went on to do the thematic analysis and used the grounded theory approach to build the theory from ground up.
Right. And then tell us some more about those 36 people that you interviewed. How many were men? How many were women? What were their profiles?
Yeah. So out of the 36, 19 were women and 17 were males. And almost all of them were in the age range of 30 plus. And the oldest person I interviewed was 52. And almost all of them were either married once or twice. Near 100% came from broken families, which means that either the parents, they were single parents, and their own parents were also single parents, either divorced, remarried, and they've come from different parts of India and also from Bangladesh. And most of them were literate, only up to middle school, like 5th standard itself. Yeah. So leading to that, leading to the demographics, I also looked at the personality profile of the traffickers. Yep. Around 50% of them had criminal backgrounds. And what motivated them? That the primary thing I could see was the greed to earn more, quick money, more than earning money. It was quick money that motivated them. And the cunningness and willingness to exploit others. This played a major role. And it normalized for them that it's okay to exploit others, was the thought process that I was able to understand from the interviews. On the other hand, when I questioned them what they feel if the families come to know that they have been arrested, so all of them express the feeling of shame, and all of them express the state of emotional upheaval. They were shameful that their relatives know that he was involved, he or she was involved in such kind of activities. And almost all of them had financial troubles even before engaging in trafficking. And that financial troubles, in fact, exaggerated. Didn't go down, they didn't earn from it anymore. And because they were not earning currently for so many months, their families got into even more poverty kind of a situation. And why did they do it even after all this risk? So I understood that they didn't have the risk perception. While they know that they did something wrong, they didn't know under which sections of law that they could be arrested for. And all of them felt that they can get away with it. Yeah. And they felt that the risks outweighed the benefits outweighed the risks. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So then what did you discover about their normal mode of operation?
In one mode of operation, if you see, the first thing is them to identify the victims who are vulnerable, and they connect to them as the next step. And later, the third is the selling them, and then they start exploiting them. There was a slight difference between the women traffickers and the men traffickers. Women were lowest in the hierarchy and were closest to the victims also. When the women didn't directly recruit a victim, they were involved in grooming the girl into the trade. And they were closest to the girl and ensured that she settles down in the business, if you can call it the business. And the other aspect is they also helped. Once they understood the business themselves, they understood that they can earn from it. And they started identifying other girls who are vulnerable, who can be lured into this. But the normalization these people had about the own identifying, connecting, and recruiting is that the girl needs to earn something more. She is also in a troubled situation. That's why I brought her here. And every one of them mentioned that the girls came willingly. Both the men traffickers and the female traffickers clearly mentioned that the woman knows that she is going to get into the sex work itself. Yeah. And coming to the traffickers, they operated in a non-hierarchical kind of network with other male traffickers. And they look at an opportunity. They see, when they sense an opportunity that there is a requirement for a girl in a particular brothel, they start networking with the men and they identify the girl. And even within this recruitment process, we could see that there was a kind of online, still the old process, the girl being identified, the boy, meeting her physically, luring her into the trade, that was still continuing. Along with that, there's also a modus operandi of utilizing the online platforms to identify girls and lure them into the work.
Right. Yep. So you mentioned hierarchy and network there. So there's a sort of a common understanding that a lot of human trafficking is a big organized crime. What did you find in your study about that? Does it support a large organization or smaller networks?
Yeah. So there were very clear references of a big boss, a big Seth, right? Indicates the linkage to organized crime. What
so
I saw,
very few references to that, was there?
Very few
Right.
references. Yeah. And these references were coming in from the key informant interviews rather than the under trials themselves. When I questioned the under trials, how they operated, whether they had a network or a boss somewhere, they all mentioned that they operated individually. Yeah. And definitely looks like a connection of loose network. Okay, the cell exploitation works in the form of a loose network where independent pimps connect to form networks whenever opportunity arises. And once this opportunistic bonding breaks, the contract gets over. Yeah. On the other hand, the key informant interviews, the lawyers and the investigating officers did mention about international rackets and big people involved in the crime, especially for girls who are from international. Yeah, and the high end of prostitution. For the high end of prostitution, these are the prostitution rings that run either for a private kind of a party, serving the rich person or an influential kind of a person in the farmhouses or the big hotels. Yeah.
Right.
Big boss is also mentioned as a person who connects the demand and supply side. The lawyers mentioned that whenever a on-ground person gets arrested, they get a call from an influential person saying that you have to get that person out. And I'm seeing a disconnect here. One person, the undertakers on ground, do not know the person operating from behind. So if there is a big network, the trials on ground definitely do not know who they are. So there is a break in the chain that connects the organized network to the person operating on the ground.
Yeah, I find that fascinating that the legal law enforcement people have a different understanding of that than the traffickers themselves. And it could be a combination, of course, that maybe the organized crime comes in the structuring of the customers, the marshalling of customers generating the demand side might be more organized than the delivery of services and the actual trafficking by the people that you were interviewing in jail.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how did the people that you interviewed go about the recruitment process? And then how does that move us into what you understood about their business models?
Yeah. Coming to the male traffickers, they depended on a referral network, and the referral network also consisted of female traffickers or some of the connect that they see on the ground who can be lured by giving some amount there in their own communities. Offline recruitment was still prominent where the lover boy kind of role is still being played out. And the third one that I've seen with the males, where the online advertising for the positions of film industry, still a big lure, or mentioning that they have won a lottery, they have to come to the city to collect that lottery. That kind of things are still prominent. And there are also mentions of fake charities operating, mentioning that the girls will be provided some kind of an education or a business kind of an opportunity. And both the genders look for vulnerable women to target. Yeah. And that's been their, the primary approach. Coming to the female traffickers, they identify potential victims from within their own social network, from their own community, or from their own religion and the village. Yeah, because they understand the vulnerabilities and the financial needs of that girl better. And majority of them are very open that they have been doing this kind of work, and the girl, if they're willing to come to the city, would be doing the sex work too. And but the promises are there that they will be able to lead a better, and they'll be able to generate the better income. And this operation is usually face to face in a sympathetic interaction kind of a mode.
Right.
And emotional kind of a play happens when they go and they interact. And girls are usually bought in bunch of 3 to 4 from a village. So it's easier for these women also to manage them and get a sizable amount of money by exploiting them. Another interesting thing that I have seen is professing of fake love. This is kind of a lover girl concept that I've seen. And this is something unique. This indicates an increase in agency of the girl, and also how innovative the girls themselves have become, and how business-minded they have turned into. So once a girl was in this trade for some time, for a year or two, they understand how the business runs. They started understanding if they bring in more girls and also earn from their revenues. So what they do is, but to do that, they would need someone to manage the logistics. So they started putting advertisement, going on to the social media a lot, and looking for men, vulnerable men. Again, they profess love, fake love, and say, okay, there's so much, and that they can take care of the boys' needs. And these guys are usually unemployed ones in the village, not much educated, don't have any livelihood opportunities. And they bring those boys here to the city, promising that they'll have a very good life and can enjoy with the person. And again, he is asked to take care of the logistic in the brothel, do the housekeeping, cook for the girl, wash clothes for the girl, and also run errands for the girl. So while they're not restricted, they're bound by an emotional bond that I love you, I'm only doing it for you, right? This business to earn that we can have a better life later. Yeah, these are the various tactics that are used by people.
Right. And then how does that lead to the kind of power structure between people in a business model?
Yeah, so we can relate the power structure to the product distribution model also here. So we see a hierarchical distribution there, where the payment money is distributed based on the agreed upon amount, based on the roles that the person has paid. So a recruiter, if they source the girl from a village, the recruiter gets a certain amount of money based again on the looks of the girl and the demand of the particular brothel. Yeah, beautiful looking girl earns definitely more. And here again, the younger the girl, the more is the rate here, the rate amount that the trafficker gets. And also it depends on the other roles they have played. So if a person is bringing in clients, they get an agreed upon amount per client basis. And also for the woman there, the sex worker herself, for the role, she gets fixed amount also. So these are all prefixed, and most of them mention that the amount, there is integrity in payments. That once the amount is agreed upon, it is paid without fail.
Right.
Yeah, and the second interesting structure we saw was the informal and loosely connected system, where it's a combination of a salary especially when you talk about physical structure of a brothel. A person who is maintaining that own brothel, the low level trafficker, he gets a fixed salary. Along with that, he gets commissions and tips also. The tips part is the major earnings for this person, and that comes from the client or the customer. Yeah. And the other one is the exploitative and oppressive structure. We did hear very little about this kind of a structure. Yeah, where trafficker takes away all the income and gives only small portion. This was also evident when the girl was newly recruited. Until the first 6 months, the trafficker earns the amount that he or she has invested in purchasing the girl. This system is very visible. After that, it goes into the informal, loosely structured, or goes into the rigid hierarchical distribution model. Yeah. And the last one is the business partnership kind of a model, where there is an equal distribution between the sex worker and the brothel owner. So once the girl is senior, around a year or two, she understands the nuances of the business and is able to demand that she deserves this much money. And it's usually 50-50% share. The brothel owner for taking the risk and hiring the premise, etc., and the girl for actually doing the work. And this is mostly applicable also for the walk-in clients, where there are no referrals made to the any third party. Yeah, whenever there is any referral made, again the commission that goes to the agreed upon commission goes to the person.
Yeah, so there's quite a varied range of models there that have different type of different levels of coercion. Some are obviously collaborative and some are exploitative. It's not just one model fits all.
Exactly. One interesting thing was violence was not mentioned at all by anyone.
Right. Well, you'd expect that by the trafficker, but
yes, a common perception that violence is inherent in the trafficking, that was missing.
Right. Yeah. Were you able to cross-check that by talking to some of the victim survivors or the other law enforcement people? Because I can imagine the traffickers themselves saying, I didn't use any violence.
Exactly. So even the law enforcement mentioned that nowadays there is no violence kind of a thing. There is no lockdown of a person in a dungeons kind of a thing. That perception is completely wrong, at least in the current situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So keep talking through this slide about how these business models link to other types of crimes.
Yes. So I also questioned them if they were connected to any other organized crime. Yeah. So male trafficker reported that there is some association with other criminals, since not an organized crime, but people in their own network were also connected to other types of crimes, or that they were also arrested. So the peer group essentially. Yeah. And there were anecdotes mentioned by them that yes, there is a big gang who use violence to control the victims. There were 2 references by male traffickers. But again, it was when they mentioned that the women are free to move about, that they do it willingly, and that there is no big boss who is controlling. So we cannot rely completely saying that connections with the organized crime network. Female traffickers did mention that there are some other people involved in other crimes, big people involved in the crimes, but no connection per se to other organized crime. What was interesting is the responses from the key informants. They mentioned that there are links to the illegal drug industry. And when I mentioned links, here it is not the criminals handling both the prostitution as well as the illegal drug trade, but it is more collaborative kind of a thing. The illegal drug industry people, they are the customers to the prostitution industry, and the clients and the business run by the prostitution, they also use the drugs to enhance their own experiences in prostitution or the sex work. So it's mostly seen in high-end prostitution. The use of opium and LSD was mentioned, and the low-end prostitution mentioned ganja, which is the lower kind of a narcotic.
Right. So they're two separate industries that work together rather than one organized crime that encompasses both.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And then, so from your data, this challenges a bit of an understanding about how organized it is, but what other common understandings maybe have been questioned or challenged by the data that you've gathered from your interviews?
Sure. So the common perception that we had that the girls didn't have agency and that they were the victims themselves. Yeah. But the interviews that with the male traffickers as well as female traffickers clearly challenge that perception. We have seen multiple anecdotes mentioned of the girl who had her own agency and came in willingly into the sex work, and in fact started thinking like a business model and luring the boys into the trade. Okay, the vulnerable boys without any opportunities. And this I term as the lover boy concept. We see the lover boy concept. There's a clear increase in agency of the girls themselves. And another thing here is we've always thought that the girls, the victims who come into sex work are uneducated and come from villages. We are seeing a clear shift here. The girls from the cities and the girls who are going to the universities also are engaging in the sex work as a lure because they wanted to earn quick money or they wanted to support their own education. Yeah. The second common concept or stereotype that I wanted to challenge here was the violence, control, and the gender dynamics. We always felt the girls were weak here and that violence was inherent and that the girls are in a controlled kind of an environment. None of them was apparent in the interviews that I have conducted. There was no violence mentioned, neither the men nor the girls, except a stray reference of a trafficker slapping a girl. Other than that, there was no mention of violence. They were not put in a controlled kind of a situation. They were free to move about in their own premises in the cities, and they were allowed to call their own families. They were free to call. In fact, they had their own phones along with them, and the girls themselves also were playing the shots. They were demanding the amount that they want. So slowly there is a change in the dynamics. And like I mentioned, the local girl is another thing that is cropping up. And sex work is being seen as an alternate livelihood. So there were girls who were already engaged in a proper job in a different industry. I don't want to name it for reason of confidentiality. They were in a proper 9 to 5 kind of a job, yet they chose to also do this. They were referred by one of their friends, but they saw the opportunity as earning a good amount in a quick manner.
Okay. Yep. So it sounds like the people accused of sex trafficking in your study thought of themselves as business people providing a structured opportunity to the people they are accused of trafficking?
Yes. Almost all, even the male and the females mentioned that. So why is it wrong? The girl coming willingly, she needs to earn money. Either they were trying to normalize their own, the sense of guilt or something, trying to come away with it, with this, rationalization. But I do sense that people are not feeling guilty of referring any people, bringing into the sex trade also.
Right. You've said that they feel a bit of moral shame, but that they were a bit ignorant of what law it was that they were violating.
Yes. So everyone was ashamed about what their family will think, about what their relatives will think, what the society will think, if they come to know that they have been arrested for this. That was the thing. If they come to know, if they were arrested for this kind of a crime. Other than that, they were trying to rationalize their own work they were doing. bringing the girls in and saying that this is nothing wrong. It's for the own good of the girl themselves. That in fact, they were trying to help the girl earn a better livelihood, kind of a thing.
Right. Well, as I listen to that analysis of the interviews, it seems to me that we still have a long way to go. The anti-trafficking movement as a whole hasn't spent enough time considering traffickers' side of the problem. We've hoped that stronger laws and imposing harsher punishments will deter people from becoming traffickers without really understanding why they became traffickers in the first place. I think we've shown here today that not enough work has been done on this. There have been some studies, but yours is quite unique. And the data that we have through your study and others challenges a lot of the common stereotypes that trafficking is not always involved with organised crime, but groups that act opportunistically and individually with the support of a personal network. That's quite a difference to what's often expected, that they don't get rich and that money might not be their primary driver, and that rather than being monsters with no conscience, they sometimes think they're helping. So where do you think the research needs to go from here, Sudha? What would you like to see happen next?
Yeah. So throughout this study, what I've understood that the experiences of women and girls in different roles within the trafficking network should be analyzed. And the reason I'm saying here is, I'll give you an example here. There was a girl who was from a broken family. The husband was abusive, alcoholic, and he had hit her a lot that day. And she just walked out of the home. She was in an emotional turmoil. That was spotted by a lady, and this was around midnight. And she walked along with the girl, and she started talking to her. And she was able to emotionally appeal to that girl's emotions. Yeah. And she said, "Why don't you come down to my home? Let's discuss tomorrow." And the girl went back, and she went back there twice, thrice. And she started understanding that this lady is, my well-wisher. She's trying to help me. So this kind of emotional manipulation happens, right? And also, there are different stages when the girl wants to come out of the home. The broken families, the various situations, the need to support her own kids. Yeah. So all this actually will mean that we need to understand the experiences of the women and girls who become traffickers themselves. They were in a vulnerable situation. What led them to become trafficker? Go into kind of an exploitation mode, right? And they know that they have faced a situation. Why are they pulling other girls into the same kind of a situation? Yes, what is leading them? And the second thing that we have to understand is what are the impact of legal and educational interventions? If we have to understand the crime better, if we have to combat a crime, we need to understand the criminal better, right? And unless we study the criminals, we will not be able to understand them. And also my study pointed out these traffickers were people just like you and me, but they have been the victims of their own circumstances. So unless we understand the circumstances, we cannot put in any awareness program that or any other policy or programs that can prevent the crime from happening again. Yeah. And also we'll have to think about the broader society norms that shape the perceptions. They are doing wrong, but yet they want to say that there is nothing wrong within it. Yes. And also, on the other hand, they're feeling very guilty about it. They have the sense of fear, shame, right? What people will think about them. So what are the perception behaviors related to sex trafficking? We need to understand better. My study was only for a group of 36 people. This subject deserves more work. It needs understanding, meeting multiple people. Yeah, understanding this better to combat the crime. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. This needs to be replicated in different populations, different cultures, different types of trafficking to get the deeper and broader picture. So that brings us to the end of our presentation, and we'll try to answer some of your questions. If this topic has interested you, please contact Sudha or myself at the email addresses on the screen. We'd especially like to hear from you if you already work in this area, or if you would like to collaborate with us in taking these ideas further. Please contact us. Thank you. Thank you, Sudha.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, Matthew.